The dinner rush at Salvatore's had finally hit its peak, and my feet were screaming. 6 hours into my shift with 4 more tables to close before I could go home. I moved through the dining room on autopilot, refilling water glasses and clearing plates with practiced efficiency. Invisible. That's what I needed to be. Maya, table 12. Roberto, the floor manager, appeared at my elbow. Mr. Moretti's party just arrived. My stomach dropped. Everyone who worked at Salvatore's knew about Vincent Moretti. He came every Friday night with an entourage of well-dressed men who spoke in low voices and never smiled unless he did first. Servers drew straws to avoid his table, not because he was difficult, but because serving him meant being seen. "Can't someone else take it?" I asked. Vanessa called out. "You're covering her section." Roberto walked away before I could protest. I gathered the wine list and took a steadying breath. I could do this. I'd survived worse than serving dinner to a man who probably wouldn't even look at my face. The air thickened as I approached table 12. Vincent Moretti sat facing the entrance, his dark suit worth more than 6 months of my rent. He was younger than expected, mid-30s, with sharp cheekbones and eyes so dark they looked black in the candlelight. 2 men flanked him, their postures alert. Not friends, guards. "Good evening, gentlemen." I kept my eyes down. "My name is Maya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with something from the bar?" Silence stretched too long. When Vincent didn't respond, I glanced up. He was watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "The Barolo," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "The 2015. I nodded, reaching across the table to place his menu. My sleeve rode up. Just for a second. Just enough. His hand caught my wrist before I could pull back. Not hard, surprisingly gentle, but firm enough that I couldn't break free without making a scene. His thumb pressed against the inside of my wrist, right over the purple fingerprints I'd been hiding for 3 days. The restaurant held its breath. "Who did this?" Vincent's voice was quiet, dangerous. My pulse hammered against his fingers. "It's nothing." I bumped into a door. His eyes met mine. "Don't lie to me." Heat flooded my face. His men had stopped talking. Other diners were starting to notice. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine." I tugged at my wrist. "Let me get that wine." He didn't release me immediately. His thumb traced the edge of one bruise, feather-light but somehow more intimate than if he'd grabbed me hard. Then, slowly, he let go. "The wine," he agreed. "And then we're going to talk about who I need to visit." I retreated to the wine cellar on shaking legs, my wrist burning where he'd touched it. This man was dangerous. Not like Marcus was dangerous. Not unpredictable violence and jealous rage. Vincent Moretti was something else entirely. Something controlled, calculated, worse. When I returned with the Barolo, Vincent was alone. His men had moved to the bar, giving us privacy I didn't want. As I poured, his eyes never left my face. "His name. Give me his name, and I'll make sure he never touches you again." My hand wavered. "I don't need your help. I can handle this myself." Vincent leaned back, studying me. "You've been handling it yourself. That's why you're covered in bruises and jumping at shadows." He paused. "I'm not offering help, Maya. I'm telling you what's going to happen. The only question is whether you make this easy or difficult." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and something cold crossed his face. "It seems we're out of time for introductions." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "What's your address?" "I'm not telling you where I live." "Then I'll have someone find it." He pulled out his wallet and placed $500 bills on the table. "For the wine, and for the conversation we're about to have." He walked toward the exit, pausing only to say over his shoulder, "Finish your shift, Maya, but when you leave tonight, my car will be waiting. We're going to solve your problem. Permanently." The door closed behind him, leaving me frozen with a racing heart. Vincent Moretti had seen my bruises. And somehow, that was more terrifying than anything Marcus had ever done. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of forced smiles and shaking hands. I could feel Vincent's absence like a physical thing, as if he'd left an imprint on the air itself. Every time the front door opened, my heart jumped. Every shadow made me flinch. By the time I clocked out at midnight, exhaustion had settled into my bones. I changed out of my uniform in the staff bathroom, pulling on jeans and a hoodie, making sure the sleeves covered my wrists completely. The $500 Vincent left was still on table 12. Roberto had put it in an envelope with my name on it, his expression carefully neutral. I shoved it in my bag and headed for the staff exit. The alley behind Salvatore's was poorly lit, lined with dumpsters and emergency exits from neighboring buildings. I usually hated walking through it alone, but tonight I welcomed the shadows. Maybe I could slip away before. A black Mercedes idled at the alley's mouth, its engine purring like a predator. Vincent leaned against the passenger door, still in his suit despite the hour. 2 men flanked him, the same ones from dinner. They straightened when they saw me. I stopped walking. "You can't just wait for me like this. I told you my car would be here." Vincent's voice carried easily across the distance between us. "Get in, Maya. I'm taking you home. I can take the bus." "At midnight? Through this neighborhood?" He pushed off the car, moving toward me with unhurried confidence. "No, you can't." Every instinct screamed at me to run. But where? Back into the restaurant? Down the alley toward the street? Vincent had already proven he could find me wherever I went. "This isn't protection," I said as he stopped a few feet away. "This is stalking." Something flickered in his dark eyes. "Call it what you want. You're still getting in the car." The ride was tense and silent at first. I pressed myself against the passenger door, watching streetlights blur past the tinted windows. The leather seat was soft, the interior smelling of expensive cologne and something else. Gun oil, maybe. The thought made my stomach twist. "How long have you been in Boston?" Vincent asked, his voice cutting through the quiet. 6 months. Running from him? My jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about. The man who left those bruises—" "You ran from him. That's why you work 2 jobs under a name that doesn't match your social security number. That's why you pay cash for everything and never stay in one place long enough to make friends." Ice flooded my veins. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know things." He glanced at me, his profile sharp in the passing lights. "Especially when someone in my city needs help, whether they'll admit it or not. Boston isn't your city." His smile was slight. Dangerous. "Keep telling yourself that." We pulled up in front of my apartment building, a sagging 3-story walk-up in a neighborhood where car alarms were white noise. Vincent's expression darkened as he took in the broken security door, the flickering hallway lights visible through grimy windows. The group of men smoking on the corner who watched our expensive car with predatory interest. "You live here." It wasn't a question. Not all of us own penthouses. I reached for the door handle. Vincent's hand caught my wrist, the unmarked one this time. "Wait." He stepped out first, surveying the street with the practiced assessment of someone used to identifying threats. One of his men murmured something I couldn't hear. Vincent nodded once, then opened my door. "I'll walk you up." "That's not necessary." It wasn't a request. We climbed 3 flights of stairs that smelled like mildew and old cooking oil. I could feel Vincent taking inventory of every security flaw, the broken lock on the 2nd floor fire door, the window with cardboard taped over cracked glass, the way my neighbor's door hung crooked on its hinges. At my apartment, I fumbled with my keys, hyper-aware of Vincent standing close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. "You're not safe here," he said quietly. Anger flared, hot and sudden. "I've survived 6 months just fine without you. Have you?" His eyes dropped to my wrist. I pushed open my door and stepped inside, turning to block his view of my shabby studio. "Thank you for the ride." "Good night, Mr. Moretti, Vincent." His gaze held mine. "When we're alone, you call me Vincent." Before I could respond, he stepped back. "Lock your door. All 3 locks. And keep your phone close tonight." I closed the door and threw the deadbolt, then the chain, then the flimsy doorknob lock that wouldn't stop a determined child. Through the peephole, I watched Vincent stand there for a long moment before finally walking away. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak made me jump. Every car door slamming outside sent my heart racing. At 3 a.m., I checked my phone and found a text from an unknown number. Unknown. You're safe tonight. Tomorrow, we talk about making it permanent. V. When morning light finally crept through my curtains, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. A new deadbolt had been installed on my door, industrial grade, the kind that actually worked. Beside it, tucked into the doorframe, was an envelope containing a heavy cardstock business card and a note in bold. Slashing handwriting, "Use this if he comes back. Day or night, I'll answer." Vincent Moretti had been inside my apartment while I slept, and I hadn't heard a thing. A week passed, and I almost convinced myself that Vincent Moretti would lose interest. The new deadbolt remained on my door. I'd tried to have it removed, but the locksmith took one look at it and said he didn't have tools strong enough. The business card stayed on my nightstand, moved there from a dozen other hiding places because some part of me couldn't throw it away. Vincent didn't come back to Salvatore's on Friday. I told myself I wasn't disappointed. Tuesday afternoon, I was covering the lunch shift when Roberto pulled me aside, his expression tight. "There's a guy at table 6 asking for you. Says he's your boyfriend." My blood turned to ice. What does he look like? Tall brown hair, scar on his left eyebrow. Roberto's eyes narrowed. "You know him?" I knew that scar intimately. I'd given it to him with a coffee mug the last time he'd cornered me in Chicago, right before I'd run with nothing but a backpack and $200. "Marcus." "Tell him I'm not here," I said, my voice barely steady. "Too late. He already saw you." Roberto gestured toward the dining room where Marcus sat, his eyes locked on me with that familiar mix of possession and rage. "Want me to call the cops?" Yes. No. The police had never helped before. Marcus knew how to play the victim, how to make me look like the unstable one. And if they ran my information, they might discover the identity I'd been using wasn't entirely legal. "I'll handle it," I lied. I finished my shift moving on autopilot, avoiding table 6 while feeling Marcus's eyes track me across the room. When my break finally came, I slipped out the back door into the alley, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. I should call someone. But who? Vincent's card was at home, and even if I had the number memorized, what would I say? "Help me. The man you warned me about found me anyway." "Running away again, Maya?" I spun around. Marcus stood at the alley entrance, blocking my path back inside. He looked thinner than I remembered, his jaw tight with barely controlled anger. "How did you find me?" My voice came out stronger than I felt. "You think you're smart, using a fake name." He moved closer, and I backed up until Brick hit my shoulders. "But you're still the same stupid girl. Same patterns. Same mistakes. I don't want trouble, Marcus. Just leave." His hand shot out, grabbing my arm, the same arm Vincent had seen bruised. His fingers dug into the barely healed marks with deliberate cruelty. "You owe me. The money you stole." The embarrassment of having to explain why my girlfriend ran off like a crazy person. He leaned in close enough that I could smell stale cigarettes and rage. "You're coming back to Chicago with me. Tonight, we're done playing this game. Let go of me." I tried to twist away, but his grip tightened until tears sprang to my eyes. "Or what? You'll scream. You'll run." Marcus's laugh was ugly. "No one's coming to save you this time. Is that what you think?" The voice came from behind Marcus, cold and dead calm. Vincent stepped out of the shadows near the dumpster, as if he'd been waiting there the entire time. His suit was immaculate, his hands loose at his sides, but something in his posture radiated lethal intent. Marcus's grip on my arm loosened slightly. "Who the hell are you?" "The man who's going to give you 10 seconds to let her go before this becomes permanent. This is none of your business." Vincent moved with terrifying speed. One moment he was 5 feet away, the next his forearm was across Marcus's throat, pinning him against the opposite wall with enough force that Marcus's feet left the ground. "You have a choice," Vincent said, his voice conversational despite the violence of his hold. "Tell me your name and why you think you can put your hands on what's mine. Or I skip the introduction and we go straight to consequences." "Marcus," the name came out strang-lied. "Marcus Webb." She's my girlfriend. Girlfriend, I corrected, my voice shaking. I left you 8 months ago. Vincent's eyes flicked to me, taking in my pale face and the way I was cradling my arm. Something dark passed across his features. Show me. With trembling fingers, I pulled up my sleeve. The old bruises had faded to yellow, but Marcus's fresh grip had left angry red marks that were already darkening to purple. The same pattern as before, the same violence. Vincent looked at my arm for a long, silent moment. Then he turned back to Marcus, and what Marcus saw in his face made him start struggling in earnest. Please, I didn't know she was with someone. She's not with someone. Vincent's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. She's with me. There's a difference. He released Marcus just enough to let him breathe. You're going to leave Boston tonight. If you ever contact her again, call, text, email, smoke signaled. They won't find enough of you to identify. Understand? Marcus nodded frantically, and Vincent let him drop. He stumbled, caught himself, and ran without looking back. The alley fell silent except for my ragged breathing and the distant sound of traffic. Vincent turned to me, his expression softening slightly. Are you hurt anywhere else? I shook my head, unable to find words. Good. He pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. Miguel is bringing the car around front. Get your things from inside. You're not staying in that apartment another night. Vincent, I can't just... Yes, he interrupted, his eyes meeting mine with absolute certainty. You can, and you will. This time I didn't have the strength to argue. 20 minutes later, I sat in the back of Vincent's Mercedes with a trash bag containing everything I owned that mattered. My landlord hadn't even blinked when Vincent's man handed him cash for breaking the lease. Money, I was learning, made everything simple in Vincent's world. This is insane, I said as we pulled away from my building for the last time. I barely know you. Vincent's hand rested on the seat between us, close enough to touch, but not quite. You know I'll keep you safe. That's all that matters right now. For how long? A week? A month? I turned to face him. I can't hide forever. You're not hiding. His eyes met mine in the dim interior. You're being protected. There's a difference. The waterfront district rose before us, glass towers that pierced the Boston skyline, each one more expensive than the last. Vincent's building stood tallest, a monument to steel and money and power that made my stomach twist with nerves. A private elevator required a key card. Vincent pressed his palm to a scanner and we ascended in silence, my ears popping as we climbed higher and higher. When the doors finally opened, they revealed not a hallway, but a home. The penthouse stretched before me like something from a magazine I'd never be able to afford. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor, the city lights reflecting off dark water. Everything was clean lines and expensive materials, dark leather furniture. Steel accents, abstract art that probably cost more than I'd earned in my entire life. This way. Vincent's hand settled at the small of my back, guiding me down a hallway. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom larger than my entire apartment had been. A king-size bed dominated the space, dressed in crisp white linens. Through another doorway, I glimpsed marble and chroma bathroom with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people. This is yours, Vincent said simply. The closet has basics, but tomorrow will get you whatever you need. I can't afford. You're not paying. He moved to the window, adjusting the curtains. Consider it part of the arrangement. What arrangement? My voice came out sharper than intended. I never agreed to any of this. Vincent turned, his expression unreadable. You agreed the moment you let me drive you away from that apartment. The moment you didn't fight when I put you in this car. He paused. The moment you realized Marcus would come back, and next time I might not be there. The truth of it settled over me like a weight. He was right. I'd known the second Marcus found me that my careful escape had failed. Running again would just delay the inevitable. Rest, Vincent said, moving toward the door. We'll talk in the morning about making this permanent. But rest was impossible. After he left, I explored the suite like a prisoner measuring her cell. The door had no lock. At least not one that would keep Vincent out. The windows didn't open. Beautiful, but trapped. I ventured into the main living space after midnight, driven by restlessness and the need to understand exactly what kind of cage I'd accepted. The penthouse was silent, except for the hum of expensive appliances. I found the kitchen, all marble and stainless steel, and then the security panel by the elevator. Cameras monitored every entrance, every hallway, every approach to the building. Light spilled from under a door at the end of the hall. I should have gone back to my room. Instead, I pushed it open. Vincent sat behind a massive desk, his jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up. Multiple monitors glowed in the darkness, showing surveillance footage that made my blood run cold. My apartment building, the alley behind Salvatore's, the bus stop I used, the coffee shop where I grabbed breakfast. "How long have you been watching me?" The question came out steadier than I felt. Vincent didn't look up from the screens, his fingers pausing over a keyboard. "Since the moment I saw those bruises and realized you were trying to hide them, that was a week ago." Yes. He finally met my eyes, and there was no apology in his expression. "Someone hurt you, and you were too afraid to ask for help." I don't wait for permission to protect what needs protecting. I'm not a thing that needs. Maya, my name was a command. "Come here." I shouldn't have obeyed. But my feet carried me around the desk until I could see what he'd been reviewing. Footage of Marcus entering my building 2 days ago, leaving an hour later, returning the next day, and the day after that. "He's been stalking you," Vincent said quietly, waiting for the right moment. "If I hadn't been at the restaurant today, He left the rest unspoken. Ice flooded my veins. "How did you know to be there?" "I've had someone watching you since Friday." He closed the laptop with deliberate care. "I told you I protect what's mine. That started the moment you pulled up your sleeve. The possessiveness should have terrified me. Instead, exhaustion and relief warred in my chest. Someone was finally watching out for me instead of hunting me. "I'm not yours," I whispered, but the protest sounded hollow. Vincent stood, moving close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "Not yet," he agreed, his hand rising to cut my face with unexpected gentleness. "But you will be." Morning light woke me, streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close. For a disorienting moment, I didn't recognize the silk sheets or the view of Boston Harbor stretching beyond the glass. Then reality crashed back. Vincent's penthouse, Marcus's attack, the surveillance footage showing just how close I'd come to something worse. I found Vincent on the terrace, coffee already waiting beside an empty chair that faced his. He wore different clothes, charcoal slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, which meant he'd left at some point during the night and returned. The thought of him coming and going while I slept should have felt invasive. Somehow, it just felt inevitable. "We need to discuss terms," he said without preamble as I sat down. "Terms." I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug, grateful for its warmth against the cool morning air. "You make it sound like a business arrangement. In a way it is." Vincent leaned back, his dark eyes assessing me over the rim of his own cup. "You stay here where you're safe. I handle Marcus permanently. In return, you stop fighting me at every turn." The word permanently made my stomach flip. What does that mean, exactly? It means he won't be a problem anymore. Vincent's tone was matter of fact, discussing violence the way someone else might discuss taking out the trash. "The details aren't your concern. If you're going to hurt someone because of me, they absolutely are my concern." Something flickered in his expression's surprise. Maybe, or respect. "I'm not going to kill him, if that's what you're worried about. But he will understand that touching you again means consequences he won't survive." I should have felt relieved. Instead, a new fear crept in. "And what happens when you decide I'm the one who needs consequences? When I don't follow your rules or stay in my lane?" Vincent set down his cup with deliberate care. "I'm not him, Maya. You're controlling where I live, who I see. I'm keeping you alive." His voice hardened. There's a difference between control and protection, and you need to learn it. Before I could respond, he pulled a folder from beneath a newspaper I hadn't noticed. He slid it across the table, and I opened it with trembling fingers. Marcus's face stared up at me from what looked like a police report. Arrest record. 3 counts of domestic assault, 2 restraining orders, 1 conviction that resulted in probation. Below that, financial documents showing debt to people with names that even I recognized from news reports about organized crime. He owes money to the Volkov family, Vincent said quietly. $60,000 at 30% interest. They sent him to find you because you have something they want, or they think you do. I don't have anything. They don't know that. To them, you're leverage against Marcus, and now you're in my city, under my protection. That changes the equation. My hands shook as I flipped through the documents. Everything I'd run from, everything I'd tried to escape, laid out in black and white. How did you get all this? I have resources. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. The question isn't how I know, Maya. It's what you're going to let me do about it. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Vincent glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor shifted, the almost gentleness vanishing behind ice-cold authority. Excuse me. He stood, pressing the phone to his ear as he walked to the edge of the terrace. I told you to handle it, ... I don't care what he said. Make him understand, ... no. Permanently. I watched him pace. Taking in the hard line of his shoulders, the clipped tone that suggested someone on the other end was about to have a very bad day. This was Vincent Moretti, the crime lord, not the man who'd gently cleaned my wounds or installed a deadbolt to help me sleep. When he returned to the table, the warmth didn't immediately come back to his eyes. It took him a moment to shift gears, to remember he was talking to me instead of whoever he'd just threatened. I have to go out for a few hours, he said, pulling a black credit card from his wallet. Miguel will take you shopping. Get whatever you need. Clothes, toiletries, anything that makes you comfortable here. I stared at the metal card he'd placed beside my coffee. I'm not your kept woman. Vincent's smile was slow, dangerous, full of dark promise. Not yet. The 2 words hung in the air between us, a threat and a promise wrapped together. He leaned down, his lips brushing my temple in a gesture too intimate for what we were. Too possessive for what we weren't. But you will be, he murmured against my skin. And sooner than you think. Then he was gone, leaving me alone on the terrace with expensive coffee, an unlimited credit card, and the terrifying realization that some part of me wanted exactly what he was offering. Even if it meant surrendering everything I'd fought so hard to keep. 3 days blurred into a week, and I stopped counting after that. Vincent's penthouse operated on rules I was still learning. Meals appeared when I was hungry, prepared by a chef I never saw, but whose cooking made my restaurant experience look amateur. My favorite coffee vanilla latte with oat milk waited on the counter every morning, though I'd never told anyone my preference. The closet in my room filled with clothes in my exact size, designer labels I'd only seen in magazines, all in colors that somehow matched my complexion perfectly. I refused to ask how he knew. Vincent himself was a ghost during daylight hours. He left before I woke, returning only as the sun set over the harbor. Business was all he'd say when I asked, and the hard set of his jaw told me not to push. I learned to recognize the sounds of his return, the elevator chiming, Miguel's low voice in the foyer, Vincent's footsteps crossing the marble floor. I learned, too, that I'd started listening for those sounds around 7 o'clock each evening. Dinner became our ritual. Vincent insisted on it, appearing in the kitchen as if summoned, still in his suit but with his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. We'd sit at the island while he asked questions that felt like interrogations disguised as conversation. Where did you grow up? He asked on the 4th night. Foster care mostly. Cleveland, then Cincinnati. I pushed pasta around my plate. 6 different homes before I aged out at 18. His eyes never left my face. No family? My mum died when I was 7. Overdose. Never knew my father. The words came easier than they should have, loosened by expensive wine and the strange safety of his attention. What about you? My father built this empire. I inherited it when I was 23. Vincent's smile was brief, humorless. He taught me that family is everything, and everyone else is expendable. Is that what you believe? It's what keeps people alive in my world. On the 6th night, I told him about my dream of opening a bakery. How I'd been saving every tip, every spare dollar, building towards something that felt impossibly far away. What kind of bakery? Vincent asked, refilling my wine glass. Small, cozy, the kind where regulars know each other's names. I could picture it so clearly it hurt. Somewhere people feel safe. His hand covered mine on the counter, warm and steady. You'll have it. You can't just make that happen. Yes, he interrupted gently. I can. The certainty in his voice made me believe him, which was perhaps the most dangerous thing of all. By the 2nd week, I'd stopped jumping when he entered a room. I'd started asking about his day, even though his answers were always vague. I'd begun to recognize the tension in his shoulders that meant something had gone wrong, and the rare softness in his eyes when he looked at me and thought I wasn't watching. I was in trouble, deeper than Marcus, deeper than anything I'd run from. On the 14th night, Vincent came home different. He moved through the penthouse with controlled violence, barely leashed, his jaw tight, his eyes distant. When he poured himself scotch instead of wine, I knew something bad had happened. Do you want to talk about it? I asked from the doorway of his office. No, but he didn't tell me to leave either. I crossed to where he stood by the window, the city lights casting shadows across his face. That's when I saw it. Dark stains on his shirt cuff, almost black against the white fabric. Blood. Vincent caught me staring, and something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Does it frighten you? His voice was quiet, almost hopeful that the answer would be yes. What I am. I should have said yes. Should have run back to my room and locked the door and remembered that this man was dangerous. That the protection he offered came with a price written in other people's suffering. Instead, I stepped forward and took his hand, pushing up his sleeve to check if he was hurt. His skin was unmarked. The blood wasn't his. You're not hurt, I said, my fingers still wrapped around his wrist. No. Vincent's free hand rose to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. But someone needed to learn what happens when they threaten what's mine. The possessiveness should have scared me. The violence should have set me running. But all I could feel was the heat of his palm against my skin and the way his eyes had gone dark with something that wasn't quite anger anymore. Maya, he breathed, my name a warning and a question. I didn't step back. And in that moment, we both knew I'd already made my choice. The attack came 3 weeks after I moved into the penthouse, shattering the illusion of safety I'd been foolish enough to believe. I woke to screaming alarms and red emergency lights flooding the hallway. Disoriented, I stumbled out of bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through my door, I heard shouts, running footsteps, and then gunfire. Sharp cracks that echoed through the penthouse like thunder. My door burst open. Vincent stood silhouetted against the chaos, a gun in his hand that he carried with terrifying familiarity. His eyes found mine in the darkness, and something in his expression made my blood run cold. Come with me, now. No room for argument, no time for questions. He grabbed my hand and pulled me into the hallway. Men in suits I'd never seen before moved through the penthouse with military precision, speaking into earpieces, checking corners with weapons drawn. This wasn't the staff I'd grown used to. This was something else entirely. Vincent led me to his office, but instead of stopping at the desk, he pressed a hidden panel in the wall. It slid open to reveal a small room lined with steel. Equipped with a chair, bottled water, and a monitor showing camera feeds from around the building. A panic room. Get inside, Vincent ordered, already turning back toward the door. Fear clawed at my throat. What's happening? They found you. His jaw was tight, eyes hard. Now they're trying to take you. Who? The Volkov family. They tracked Marcus here, realized you were under my protection. He cupped my face, his touch gentle, despite the violence crackling through the air. They think taking you will give them leverage against me. My legs nearly gave out. This is my fault, no. The word was final. This is them making a mistake they won't survive. He pushed me gently but firmly into the panic room. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone but me. Understand? Vincent promised me, Maya. I promise. His lips brushed my forehead, too brief, too gentle for what was happening outside. Then he was gone. The steel door ceiling shut behind him with a pneumatic hiss. I sank into the chair, watching the monitors with mounting horror. Men I didn't recognize moved through the lobby, weapons drawn. Vincent's security team met them with brutal efficiency. On one screen, I watched Miguel take down 2 attackers in the stairwell. On another, Vincent himself moved through the penthouse like death incarnate, every movement precise and lethal. I'd known what he was. But knowing and seeing were different things entirely. The fighting lasted 15 minutes that felt like hours. I watched men fall, watched blood stain expensive marble, watched Vincent's world reveal itself in all its violent truth. When the alarms finally stopped and silence descended, I couldn't tell if we'd won or lost. Footsteps approached the panic room. My heart hammered as I pressed myself against the far wall, remembering Vincent's warning not to open for anyone else. Maya, his voice, rough but alive. It's me. Open the door. I pressed the release, and the door slid open. Vincent stood there, blood on his hands. Not his, I prayed, his shirt torn, a cut above his eyebrow bleeding sluggishly. But alive. Whole. I threw myself at him without thinking, my arms wrapping around his neck. He caught me, one arm banding around my waist, while the other hand cradled the back of my head. You're okay, I breathed against his throat. You're okay. Did you think I wouldn't be? There was dark amusement in his voice, but his arms tightened around me. I told you I'd come back. I pulled back just enough to see his face. How many? For dead. 3 captured. 4 questioning. He said it like he was discussing the weather. The rest retreated. They won't try again. How can you be sure? Vincent's smile was cold, promising violence. Because I'm about to send a message they can't ignore. His hand moved to cut my face, thumb brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. They came for you, Maya. That means this is no longer about protection. Then what is it about? His eyes held mine, dark and possessive and absolutely certain. Ownership. You're officially mine now. My responsibility. My woman. Mine. Each word was a brand. Anyone who touches you is declaring war on me personally. The possessiveness should have terrified me. But standing in his arms, surrounded by evidence of the violence he'd unleashed to keep me safe, all I felt was a dangerous sense of belonging. Say you understand, Vincent murmured, his forehead pressing against mine. Say you accept what that means. I should have fought it. Should have demanded he let me go, find my own way, live my own life. Instead, I whispered, I understand. I'm yours. His kiss was brutal and claiming, tasting like blood and victory and something that felt terrifyingly like home. The sun rose over a penthouse that looked like a war zone. Cleaning crews Vincent had called worked in efficient silence, removing bloodstains from marble, replacing shattered glass, erasing evidence of violence as if it had never happened. I watched from the terrace, wrapped in one of Vincent's shirts, unable to stop shaking. Vincent found me there an hour later, showered and changed, the cut above his eyebrow the only visible reminder of the night's chaos. He set a cup of coffee beside me without a word and leaned against the railing, his profile sharp against the morning light. Marcus is gone, he said quietly. He left Boston last night on a plane I paid for. He won't be coming back. Relief and dread tangled in my chest. And the others, the Volkov family. Handled. The single word carried the weight of decisions I'd never asked about, but understood anyway. They've been informed that you're under my protection. Officially. Publicly. Something in his tone made me look up. What does that mean? It means every organization in this city now knows that touching you is the same as declaring war on me. Vincent's eyes met mine. You're no longer just someone I'm protecting, Maya. You're mine. That announcement has consequences. As if summoned by his words, the elevator chimed. 3 men emerged, older, harder versions of the security team I'd grown used to. They moved with the confidence of people who owned rooms just by entering them. Vincent straightened, his hand finding the small of my back. Maya, these are my business associates. They wanted to meet the woman who's become so important to me. The next hour was a lesson in what Vincent's world actually looked like. These men, Dimitri, James, and someone who insisted I call him only uncle, studied me with sharp eyes that missed nothing. They asked careful questions about my past, my plans, my intentions toward Vincent. It felt less like conversation and more like an interview I hadn't prepared for. She's not what I expected, Uncle said in heavily accented English, his eyes on me but his words clearly for Vincent. Soft. Breakable. She's stronger than she looks, Vincent replied, his hand tightening possessively at my waist. And she's mine. That should be the only thing that matters. After they left, I stood in the center of the penthouse, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle over me like a suffocating blanket. I wasn't just living in Vincent's world anymore. I was part of it. A piece on his chessboard, a weakness his enemies would exploit, a symbol of something I hadn't chosen. The panic came in waves. I made it to the terrace before my legs gave out, sinking onto the cold stone as tears I'd been holding back finally spilled free. Vincent found me there as the sun climbed higher, my face buried in my hands, my whole body shaking with the enormity of it all. Maya. He knelt beside me, his hands gentle on my shoulders. Talk to me. I've brought you nothing but danger, I choked out. People died last night because of me. Because you decided I was worth protecting. They died because they made a choice to attack what's mine. His fingers tilted my face up, forcing me to meet his eyes. That's not on you, but it is. If you'd never what? Let me see your bruises. Let me help you. His thumb wiped away tears with devastating tenderness. I would have found another reason to make you mine, Maya. From the moment I saw you, this was inevitable. I'm terrified, I admitted, the truth spilling out before I could stop it. Not of you, of wanting this. Of needing the safety you offer so badly that I'd accept everything that comes with it. Understanding flickered in his dark eyes. You think that makes you weak, doesn't it? Okay. No. Vincent pulled me into his arms, one hand cradling the back of my head while the other wrapped around my waist. It makes you human. And it makes you mine. He pulled back just enough to see my face. I've done terrible things, Maya. I'll do worse to keep you safe. If that makes me a monster, then I'm your monster. His lips found mine, the kiss achingly gentle despite the violence he was capable of. I tasted his certainty, his possession, his dark promise of protection at any cost. When we finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, Vincent's forehead rested against mine. Say you understand, he murmured. Say you accept what I am, and what that means for you. I thought of the blood on the marble, the men with assessing eyes, the cage I was choosing to walk into with full knowledge of what it would cost. Then I thought of a lifetime of running, of fear, of never belonging anywhere or to anyone. My answer was to kiss him again, deeper this time, accepting the darkness along with the safety. I understand, I whispered against his lips. You're my monster, and I'm yours. 2 days later, Vincent's driver took us back to my old neighborhood. I'd asked for one final trip to collect the few possessions that actually mattered. To close a chapter of my life that already felt like it belonged to someone else. The building looked smaller than I remembered, more run down in the harsh afternoon light. Vincent's security team swept the apartment first, checking for threats that no longer existed but might have left traces behind. When they gave the all clear, Vincent followed me inside, his presence overwhelming in the tiny studio I'd called home for 6 months. This is where you lived, he said, and it wasn't a question. I watched him take in the peeling paint, the window I'd covered with cardboard after the landlord refused to fix the broken pane, the hot plate that passed for a kitchen. His jaw tightened. This is what you thought was safe. It was all I could afford. I moved to the closet, pulling out the battered shoebox that held my treasures. And it was mine. Inside, my grandmother's recipe cards, yellowed with age and grease stains. 3 photographs from before me at 16, smiling with a woman who'd fasted me for 2 years before budget cuts separated us. The acceptance letter to culinary school I'd received at 17. Edges worn from being folded and unfolded 1,000 times. Dreams I'd never been able to afford. Vincent watched silently as I packed these fragments of my past. When I reached for the top shelf, he was there, his hand steadying my waist as I stretched for a small wooden box. "What's that?" he asked. I opened it carefully. Inside, a simple silver locket on a delicate chain, the only thing I had from my mother. She was wearing it when she died. Social services gave it to me when I turned 18. Vincent took the locket gently, opening it to reveal a tiny photo of a woman with my eyes and my smile. "She's beautiful. Like you." The unexpected tenderness in his voice made my throat tight. I don't remember much about her, just fragments. The way she sang when she cooked. How she always smelled like vanilla. "That's why you love baking," Vincent realized, his thumb tracing the locket's edge. "You're trying to find her again." The insight stole my breath. No one had ever understood that before, not even me, really. "Maybe," I admitted. A knock at the door made us both tense. Vincent's hand moved instinctively to his waist, where a gun probably rested. Beneath his jacket, but it was just Mrs. Chun from across the hall, her wrinkled face peering through the crack in the door. "Maya? I wanted to make sure you're okay. Those men, double quotes." Her eyes landed on Vincent, widening slightly at his expensive suit and commanding presence. "I'm fine, Mrs. Chun." I crossed to the door, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I'm moving. These are friends helping me." "Friends," she repeated doubtfully, her gaze flickering between me and Vincent. "You're not in trouble?" The question hung in the air. Was I in trouble? By every objective measure, yes, I traded independence for protection, freedom for safety, my own choices for Vincent's certainty. But trouble implied unwanted danger, and what I felt standing in this apartment, with Vincent watching over me, wasn't fear. It was relief. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not in trouble. I'm finally safe." Mrs. Chun studied my face, then nodded slowly. "Good. You deserve safe, sweet girl." She squeezed my hand once more before shuffling back to her apartment. When I turned around, Vincent was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You told her you're safe with me." "I am. Even knowing what I am, what I've done." I crossed to him, taking my grandmother's recipe box and the locket, sliding them carefully into the bag that held everything I was choosing to keep from this life. Especially knowing that. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "You understand there's no going back after this. Once you choose me, choose this life, you're mine completely. Not just protected owned." The word should have sparked rebellion. Instead, it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. "I know." I placed my hand over his heart, feeling it beat steady and strong beneath my palm. "I'm choosing you, Vincent. Your world. Your protection. Your cage." I met his eyes. "I'm choosing to be yours." His kiss was claiming and possessive, a seal on the promise we were making to each other. When we finally broke apart, he pressed the locket into my hand. "Then let's go home," he said simply. And as we walked out of that apartment for the last time, Vincent's hand firm at my back, and his security team flanking us, I realized he was right. The penthouse wasn't a prison. It was home. 3 months later, I stood in a space that smelled like butter, sugar, and possibility. Sweet Haven occupied a corner storefront in the North End. All exposed brick and wide windows that let morning light pour across marble counters. Vincent had found the location, handled the lease, and somehow cut through months of permits and inspections in a matter of weeks. I'd stopped asking how he made things happen. In his world, money and influence opened doors that stayed locked for people like me. But the bakery itself, that was mine. Every recipe, every detail, every choice from the vintage display cases to the mismatched chairs came from the dreams I'd been building since I was 16. Vincent had given me the space and security to make it real, but he'd never once told me what to do with it. You're thinking too hard again. I turned to find Vincent leaning in the doorway, still in his suit despite the early hour. He'd been at a meeting until 3 a.m., the kind he never discussed and I'd learned not to ask about. But here he was at 6:30, watching me prep for opening like he had nowhere else to be. Just making sure everything's perfect, I said, wiping flour from my hands. It is. He crossed to me, his arms circling my waist from behind. Because you made it. Through the window, I could see Miguel in the black sedan parked across the street. Another security team member sat in the coffee shop 2 doors down. I was never truly alone. That was part of the bargain I'd made. But I'd learned that protection didn't have to mean prison. I love you, Vincent murmured against my neck, the words still new enough to make my heart skip. He'd said them first 2 weeks ago, after a nightmare had woken him gasping. His hands reaching for me in the dark to confirm I was real. I was safe. I was his. I turned in his arms, flour dusting his expensive suit. I love you too. The bell above the door chimed. Vincent tensed immediately, his body shifting to shield me before he recognized the visit. Mrs. Chun, clutching her worn purse and smiling brightly. I told you I'd come for opening day, she said, her eyes twinkling. And I brought my mahjong group. 4 more elderly women filed in behind her, chattering in a mix of English and Cantonese. They'd been my first real friends in Boston. The neighbors who'd checked on me when I lived in that cramped apartment. Who'd never asked questions but always seemed to know when I needed company. Vincent stepped back, giving me space to greet them, but his hand found mine briefly, squeezing once, a reminder that he was there. Watching, protecting, even in these small, ordinary moments. The morning passed in a blur of customers and compliments, college students grabbing coffee before class, office workers picking up pastries, regulars who'd somehow already formed in just 2 weeks of soft opening. This, the warmth and community and simple satisfaction of watching people enjoy something I'd made, this was what I'd been searching for. By closing time, my feet ached and my hands were cramped from piping frosting, but I was happier than I could remember being in years. Vincent appeared as I was wiping down counters, his meeting apparently finished. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and something in his expression made my breath catch. What? I asked. Just watching you. He moved into the kitchen space, backing me gently against the counter. Watching you be happy. Be free. Be mine. I am yours, I confirmed, my arms wrapping around his neck. My protector. My cage. My home. His kiss was slow and thorough, tasting like promises and permanence. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I handled the last of the Volkov situation today, he said quietly. It's done. Finished. You're safe. Now really safe. No one will touch you, because I'm yours. Because you're mine, he agreed, the possessiveness in his voice sending warmth through me. And I'll protect what's mine. I thought of the girl I'd been 6 months ago. Horrified. Running. Convinced safety was something other people got to have. That girl would never have believed she could end up here. Loved by a dangerous man, protected by his power, free within the boundaries he'd built around her. No regrets? Vincent asked, echoing the question from months ago. I looked around the bakery, my dream made real. Then at Vincent, my monster, my protector, my unexpected salvation. No regrets, I whispered. Just gratitude. His smile was rare and genuine, transforming his face from dangerous to devastating. Then let's go home, Mrs. Moreau. The proposal caught me off guard. Vincent. Say yes, he interrupted gently. Say you'll marry me. Say you'll let me protect you, cherish you, keep you safe for the rest of our lives. Standing in my bakery, flour in my hair, and surrounded by the life we'd built together, there was only one answer. Yes, I breathed. Yes, to everything. And as he kissed me again, I realized that sometimes the right cage isn't a prison at all. Sometimes it's just another word for home.